Welcome to JavaScript week 1 of class 24.
All right, you'll get the full experience again, full screen sharing. Exactly. Let's go big. Well, welcome everyone. I thought that today I might kick it off with just talking a bit about Git because I can see there's still issues, and I was just going to go through the process of how to manage your branches when you work on homeworks, right? Mm-hmm. So as you can see on most of the homeworks, we have this section in the bottom which says hand in homework. And then there's a link to the homework guide, and it pretty much says what you have to do. I think I haven't done it in a while, so maybe it's wrong, outdated or something like that. But let's check. So first of all, we should check out main from our homework branch. And since I haven't cloned the repository yet, I should probably do that. So let's create a new repository from this homework test. All right. So now I'm going to close the repository. You all did that already, right? So you have a folder. Let's say I create this folder in my sites folder. So I'm just going to say git clone. Oh, this might be a bit too small for you, right? Clone, and then I'll paste the URL. Yes.
What is the difference between main and master? Like sometimes it becomes.
It's two different branches. So you can have a main branch or you can have a master branch. And the convention right now is that main would be your default branch. And previously, most repositories had master as their default branch, but that's pretty much been phased out. So it's just two different branches that you can have. And one of them is your default branch. And you can see what your default branch is by going to GitHub and going to your repository. And then it's going to be on the default branch. And it has this little badge here, right? Where it says default. And this is, it's completely irrelevant to Git what your default branch is. It's just important for GitHub because then when you create a pull request, it's going to target that branch, right?
And one more question, Alex, is it important that we are logged in to our Git account when we are pushing from local repository?
Yeah, so I don't know how you've set up your GitHub setup, but I use SSH keys, so you can see that I use this SSH URL git@github.com and then the repository name. If you have something like HTTPS here, then you're using like the basic authentication. Both work, both have their like benefits and drawbacks. But basically Git has to be authenticated with GitHub. You don't have to be logged in the browser. It doesn't really matter, like, because you can have different browsers, right? But the Git client, it has to be able to authenticate with GitHub. But if you try to pull and push and it doesn't work, then you will see that you're not logged in, right? Did you experience that?
Yeah, we were just doing that, and as soon as he logged in into his browser and he was able to push it.
Okay,
So
that's strange.
That's when I never expected it, so that's why I had question.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a bit strange, yeah. Okay, so now I have my repository. It's called cloning into homework test. So what I will do, I will write code dot, and this will open Visual Studio Code in this folder. And you should always, when you're working on a homework, you should always open the main folder of your repository. Like don't open like just the JavaScript folder in Visual Studio Code, because it's going to be confusing. Like what is the parent folder? Like where's the Git repository? Because the Git repository lives in this folder, right? You can see there's a Git folder right here, right? Well, actually, this is the Git folder that's in the repository because the actual Git folder is hidden. So
Actually, I had the same problem, but it wasn't like that. I created a folder on my desktop and I put that folder, the HYF homework folder, in that folder.
okay,
So anytime I was opening it, I didn't open the HYF, I opened the other folder that I have created.
okay,
So I couldn't
yeah,
do it properly.
yeah. So the main folder of your repository is the one that contains the .git folder, right? And there's also a Git folder in this repository, in this specific one. So that's actually a bit confusing, but that's because you were working on the Git homework at some point. So whoever created this template has made a Git folder. And you might not be able to see this hidden folder because it has the dot in front of it. So in Finder or Windows Explorer, you might not be able to see it. So you'll have to use the command line or enable hidden files.
Yeah, I can't remember this shortcut is
Yeah.
it was Command Shift and
Dots?
dot
Yeah, I
probably
think so,
in my-
yes.
You know what? At that time, we did something with the code, SSQ code, something like that,
Mm,
because I did all of these that
Mhm.
you have explained,
yeah,
but still I couldn't do any push or pull
okay.
my GitHub. And then I talked to one of the mentors
Mhm.
and she told me that you should have done an SSQ code, something like that.
SSH, maybe SSH
Yes,
key?
yes.
Okay,
So,
but we can check that. So if you all open, like whoever's interested in this, if you open your terminal on your homework folder, right, and you type, and now I have to remember this. I think it's git remote ls. No, git remote. No, I want to see details. Yeah. So if you type git remote -v, you will see that you have a remote set up for your Git repository, and that means whenever you pull or push, it's gonna contact GitHub at this URL, and it's gonna be like, okay, what is new in the Git repository? Tell me, right? And then GitHub will respond, okay, here's the changes, and then when you push, it will do the same thing but the other way around. And if it says HTTPS here, you're not using SSH keys, and you might need to change stuff. So does it say git add github.com for you when you run this command in your homework folder?
if it says nothing.
If it says nothing, then you have no remote set up, I guess.
Yeah, but I have both SSH and
Okay, so you're sure that you're in your folder, in your homework folder, and you say git remote -v,
yeah.
and it says nothing. Okay. Yeah, so you have no remote set up actually. Yes. So what if you say git status?
Yeah,
So you have it set up with HTTPS?
Yep.
And it work, like, does it work? Okay, then it's fine. It's only if it doesn't work, then you might want to change to SSH keys, right? Okay, so you could already see that I didn't know the command for like listing the remotes, right? Then that's because I use a Git client, because I hate the Git command line. I think it's really difficult to understand. Many people really like it and they use it every day, but I don't like it. So what I suggest to you is that you can also use a Git client if you want to, if you don't like the command line. And one of the clients is built in right into Visual Studio Code, and that's the tab where it says source control here. You had a question?
Yeah, if I go just inside in each one of homework, so it says that it has remote.
Okay, maybe you have two Git repositories nested.
No, I just use it like
Okay.
we do.
Okay, let's look at it later then. And so now let's follow the guide. So it says check out from main to your homework branch. So how do we know on which branch we're right now? I have it open and it's Git branch. Okay, that's the terminal, but you're already in your editor, right? How do you know it from here? Like from this screen without changing anything?
Why is the left one?
This one?
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. Here it says main. So you know that on your local branch, you're already on main right now, right? And then it says, go through the homework checklist. So there's actually another thing that we have to open now and go through the homework checklist. All right. So this is the homework checklist, apparently. Well, I haven't created any files, so I can't really do any of that. But to be honest, something is missing here, right? Because now it says create a pull request using the homework branch, but we didn't even create a homework branch. Oh, that's why it says check out from main to your homework branch. But that's okay, that might not be so easy to understand, because what this means is now we're on main, right? But we don't want to commit our homework to main. We want to commit our homework to a homework branch, but we haven't even created the homework branch yet, right? So what you can do is you can click on the little main here in the bottom, and then it comes up with this little dialog here, and then you say, I have no idea how the naming scheme should be. Guess it should be something like this, right? So let's say create branch, JavaScript, week 3.
No, JavaScript 1 or 2, and then JavaScript dash JavaScript 1.
Okay, that's, yeah, no, that's really complicated. I don't know who thought of this name. Okay.
I'm traumatized.
Yeah.
It follows the folder structure, but that's completely misleading because it has nothing to do with the folder structure. Yeah, okay. Okay. But in the end, you can name your branch whatever you want, right? You just have to indicate on your pull request, this is the homework for this module, right? So now I'll press enter, and now you can see I've checked out this branch actually. So whenever you're not sure what this shows here, you can always open a terminal and you can be like, okay, git status, just to make sure that Visual Studio Code is telling you the right thing. So now it says on branch, JavaScript 2, week 3.
So important to create new branch from main, not just like I always work it. If I made a push, pull request, and then I create a new branch at work. But it was said that we need to create the new branches always from the main.
Okay, let's see. I have this tool called source tree that I usually use for Git. And I think it's very obvious here when you look at the graph. So let's create like a test file here in this, just in the root. But also, I mean, now I'm working on JavaScript 2 week 3, so maybe I just want to put it here actually, right? But I think this is the confusing part, right? The branch name has nothing to do with in which folder you make changes. Like you can make changes in all the folders and still your branch name will be JavaScript 2 week 3. Like even though it corresponds to the folder structure. It doesn't have anything to do with that, right? So now I have the test file, and what I would do is I would go here, and this is a bit simplistic sometimes because there are just these buttons and you kind of have to remember what they do. But now you can see I have a list of changes, right? I have a test file here that is new. And what I can do is I can press this little plus, and then it says stage changes. So what it will do, so let's maybe check the git status now. So git status tells us that I have this untracked file. It's new, it's not known to Git. When I delete it, it will be gone forever, right? So once I stage the file, Git knows about the file. And you're kind of on the more secure side now, because now if you delete the file, it will still be changed, still be staged, and Git will still know about it. So if we run git status now, you will see that Git knows about the file now. It's a new file. It's been staged. So now what I do, I put a commit message. I just say create test file, and then I will press commit. And so all the changes that I had staged, now it was only creating one file, they have been committed now to this branch that I'm currently on. So now I can say git status, and it will tell me nothing to commit, all good. And if I look at source tree now, it will tell me that main is still on this commit, right? And my JavaScript branch is now on a different commit because I added one commit to this branch. So they have diverged, right? And right now this is reflected in a straight line, right? Now let's go back to main. And as you can see, the test file has been removed because it's not on main yet, right? It's not been committed or merged to main. So now let's create a new branch called. I mean, I am on.
Disappears when you change the branch.
Why the file disappears? Because it's not on the branch. The test file is only on this branch. It's not on the main branch.
But why they disappear?
Because these two branches have different histories. They are separate versions of your folder. One version includes the file, and the other version doesn't include the file.
Like alternative.
Exactly.
Multi-universes.
Yes.
You come here to this universe, you have it, and the other one you don't.
And so let's create a new branch.
Can we delete branches? Is there a way to do that?
Sure, you can delete branches.
Okay, at the end of this part, this is about not deleting branches because I have many of them.
Yeah, you don't need to. I mean, don't worry about deleting branches. It's not really needed. Like they take up no space. Don't worry about it. But let me
But what if we on the previous branch and create a new?
let's try this one by one. Like we can't do all at the same time, right? Are you still listening, or should we continue this later? Anything relevant to the class that we should all discuss? Okay. So let's see what happens if we create a new branch. Now it's called JavaScript 3 week 1. And now let's go back to our graph. And now you can see that this branch is on the same commit as main, right? So the new branch that I created, it's not on this path, but it's on this path. And now if I make changes to this branch, let's say I want to create a test2 file here. I will stage it. I'll put a message. And I will commit. Now we can see that we have two different paths. So we have main, which is on the initial commit. Then we have our JavaScript 3 week 1, which is on this path, the blue one. And then we have the JavaScript 2 week 3, which is on a different path, the orange one, right? So this is why you want to create your branches from main, because let's see what happens if we go and create. Now we're on JavaScript 3 week 1. And now we create a new branch from this branch. Let's call it JavaScript 3 week 2. And now we're creating the test3 file. And we're committing it, staging it, committing it. Committing it. Okay, and now you can see that something weird has happened, right? Because now we've been following the blue path instead of creating a third one from main. Right? So
created a branch in a branch.
you created a branch that is based on another branch.
Okay.
And so the advantage is that, of course, it includes all the changes from the other branch, but that's also at the same time the disadvantage, because now if you create a pull request from your top branch, it will also include the changes from this branch. So it will be very confusing for somebody to review because you haven't like compartmentalized your changes into a single branch. Does that make sense? Okay. And another concept that you might be forgetting over time is that why do I have these 3 labels here on my initial commit? Can anybody explain this to me? Like, why isn't there just one main?
I'm sorry, I cannot see it.
Yeah. I'm not sure if I can make this any bigger. I don't think so.
Okay, is that like 3 different branches?
Okay, that's too big. Ah, jeez. Okay. So it's 3 different labels that we have here, right? So why does it have three different ones? These ones only have 1, right? Isn't that strange?
Origin head is last commit.
Yes, that's correct. So head is always, it's like something that you don't really have to worry about. It's something that Git uses to sort of figure out where you are right now. So we can just forget about this. But then you have this origin/main. So what does it mean?
Where we have to push all the time.
Yeah, so origin, what is that?
That's our GitHub account folder.
Yeah, so it's the remote that you added, right? Yeah, I can't show this right now because of the Zoom. But yeah, so origin in this case is your remote, but you can name your remotes whatever you want. It's just whoever invented this feature in Git thought that origin was a good name for a default remote. I have no idea why, but they thought that would be good. So you can also call this GitHub or whatever you want. It's just the name of your remote. So source tree knows that your main branch, it also exists on GitHub, right? It exists on your local machine. That's why there's this main tag, but it also exists on GitHub as origin main. And those, they don't exist on GitHub. So why don't they exist on GitHub? Yeah, because we haven't pushed them, exactly. And this is where I'm a bit unsure because I know that GitHub Visual Studio Code has this feature here where it says publish branch. Once you've pushed your branch, it changes to this little synchronize icon. And I think it might just push this branch that I'm on currently, but you can try this out, or you can always use the command line or a different Git client. But let's see what happens. It's going to push. Takes a long time, apparently. Okay.
Maybe it's logging because you open the file somewhere else.
No,
You didn't take this.
no.
And all this thing.
Well, okay, I'm just gonna quit Visual Studio Code. Yeah, let's see what our status is. So can we actually see when I say let's check out main? So now you can see switch to branch main, your branch is up to date with origin main. But if I check out JavaScript, week 2, it doesn't say your branch is up to date with origin main because it's not tracking origin main. It's not connected to GitHub. So let's see if we can convince Visual Studio Code to publish our branch. Try it one more time. Yeah, I think it's not working.
You could just open the terminal in Visual Studio Code.
Yeah. So I mean, this is the same thing as
Yeah.
opening the integrated terminal. So let's see. So now it tells me that something is wrong.
Origin.
And that's because I haven't really told it that I want this branch to go on origin, because we could have multiple remotes, right? We could have GitHub, GitLab, my own server, Bitbucket, whatever. Like you can have any Git service as your remote. So it suggests me that you can do this, git push set upstream origin, blah, blah, blah. So I'm just going to do that. Yeah, and it also stores. Well, I don't know what's going on here. No, it seems that there's some connection issue. It should work, yeah. Duration timed out.
Try now, maybe because it was already published.
No. It might be the well, that's a bummer. I don't know if you ever experienced this. Have you ever tried to push from here, from Okay, we're back.
Also on my GitHub or only on the work? But are they like branch this and then they get origin branch? Or just like that, so I think it's simply not that good. I actually haven't seen a lot of posts.
Yeah, look, this is someone who uses the Git terminal like CLI all the time. So
Yeah.
we're complete opposites, I guess. I would never do this.
Doing lots of branches, like I think 3 clicks on GitHub. So you write git branch there.
It doesn't open the Zoom anymore. I'm sorry. I can't Zoom for you. But sorry?
You have Zoom, no? That's the umbrella between.
Yeah, it's running, but I can't open the
Maybe try
this-
on the bottom right, click on the icon in the taskbar,
yeah, but I mean Zoom itself is running. That's fine.
and click that, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, but I was trying to open the Zoom feature of macOS and it's not opening. But anyways, where were we? Okay, I was showing that now you can see this branch that I pushed. It also has the tag origin, JavaScript, and so forth, right? Because now it's also on GitHub. And we can double check that. It actually says it here, you pushed this like 3 minutes ago, right? So now when I go to branches, I can see that I have this branch here, right? And so don't just delete branches here because you're going to run into some issues because you still have your local branch that tracks the remote branch. So you have to resolve you do have to remove it from your local. You have to remove the tracking, basically, whatever you call that. It's probably what he just told you. So usually there's no need to just delete branches that you're still working on. If you've finished working on them, of course you can delete them. That's fine, but it may cause you more problems than good if you just delete them, right? After you merge them, you can of course delete them. So let's try what this looks like. So I'm gonna go to pull requests, and it already suggests me now I made this thing, right? So let's create a pull request. All right. Okay. So I guess this is something that is very common for you. I created this homework, JavaScript 3 week 2, and it includes week 1 as well. So why is that?
Because you can create a branch in the branch.
Exactly, because my branch is based on the week 1 branch. So how do I fix that now?
I learned that the hard way, actually.
I think we're gonna fetch the result from week 1 and then delete it and then create a new one and stash.
Yeah. I mean, there are many ways to fix this.
Yeah, delete that one, break it again.
Personally, I would probably go for something that is called reset to this commit, and there's also a command line option for this. I have no idea. It's something like tilde 2 heads,
Yeah.
whatever.
The software.
Exactly. So I mean, I can only recommend you to get a Git client for these kind of things because it's so much easier. Like I just click reset to this commit. So what I'm going to do is I want to reset my branch that I'm currently on, which is JavaScript 3 week 2. I want to reset it to main so that I can recommit my changes, right? So I do this and then I say soft to keep all local changes. So that means all the commits that have been created after this one that I reset to, they will just be in the folder, but they will not be changed, not be staged, not be committed. They will just be there for me to look at. So I'll just say, okay. And so now you can see that there's quite a mess here. So let's try and resolve this. So what Git has done is has reset my my branch to main, and you can see that because like GitHub is 2 commits ahead, right? You can see that here because I can pull 2 commits. So what we need to do later, we need to force push, which is something you can do on your own branches, but you have to do it carefully. So now what I want to do is I want to unstage the test2 file because that's from week 1, right? I just want to delete it. All right. Now this one can stay changed and stay staged. And I will say add test file for week 2. Commit. And now if I say sync changes, okay, well, it tells me this one. It looks like the current branch might have been rebased. Are you sure you still want to pull into it? Okay, so Git Visual Studio Code is a bit funky in that it has no buttons for pull and push. It just has one button for pull and push. So you don't really know in which order it's going to do it. And apparently it wants to pull first, and no, we don't want that. Okay, cancel. But I can try it here, or I can actually try it in the terminal. Let's say I want to say git push. And so now it tells me my changes got rejected. So why did my changes get rejected?
You have a branch. You got name.
Yeah, and because it's ahead, right? We can see that in the graph. Now I could really use that zoom.
Maybe take a screenshot.
I don't know what happened. It's not working.
Keyboard shortcut.
It's not working. Ah, right.
Option and something.
Let's do it like this.
Yeah.
All right. So now we have this like really confusing diagram. But basically what happened is I have my local branch called JavaScript 3 week 2, and it says 1 ahead and 2 behind. So it means I created 1 commit locally, but there are also 2 commits on GitHub that I haven't pulled yet. And that's because I reset the branch to main. And so you can see that this one that corresponds to this branch on GitHub, it's on a different path. And that's not good, right? Because we're like moving from each other. My local branch has sort of gone back in history and rewrote history. And now the GitHub branch doesn't fit anymore because they have different history. So what I'm presented with is when I try to push, it tells me that I can't because, well, they're not compatible anymore. They have different histories. So what I can do is I can say git push force. And what it basically will do is it will delete the remote branch on GitHub and recreate it from your local branch.
In main?
So now, no, I was on my JavaScript 2 JavaScript 3 week 2 branch, right? So now the result is this. Both of them are on the add test file for week 2 commit. So all is good. And now if I go back to my pull request, I can see there are new changes. So I'm just going to click refresh. I only have 1 file now because I rewrote history and I force pushed it to my branch, right?
But we shouldn't use it, right? It will delete every issue.
Yeah, you have to use it carefully. So if you don't have the changes that you're rewriting anywhere else, you lose them, right? That's why Git forces you to use the force flag so that you know you're doing something bad, basically, right?
The moral is don't do mistakes.
I'm sorry, and can it be possible that I face issues when I, for example, I created some files for like homework and I uploaded them, submitted them, and then I worked in my local directory, and then I don't know, something happens, and then they disappear from my like folder vision of my local computer. So I go to my folder, there's nothing.
Okay.
It's because of the branch.
Maybe you changed branches, right?
But it's on my computer, it's not on the top.
Yeah, but even on your computer, you're using Git to manage your files. And Git has a concept of branches. And if you're on one branch, you can have totally different files than on another branch. And you can change between those branches so that Git can recreate the folder in the way it should be for this branch, right?
Like Spider-Man.
No, I search in the finder, the name of the folder. Like that.
Yeah, but if you change your branch back to this file, the audio again.
It's like the universe.
Yeah.
You're in this universe, you go to another one.
That I told you last time, but yeah.
It's hard, not my computer.
Also locally.
Right? Then you can access them one day in GitHub, like, because I create my files using Git sites, and then I create some file, and then again, it shows in VS Code, but it doesn't show on computer, it's so confusing.
But I mean, always look at the left bottom corner, right?
Yeah.
Like, pay attention to the branch you're on and change the branch if you're on the wrong branch, right? Change to main if you're on the wrong branch. Now you can see the file got deleted because it's not on main, right? It's not here. This is why in the pull request, it shows as change. It got added. So when I complete this pull request, now in the beginning, nothing will have changed. But if I press the update button here, now the file is suddenly here, right? Because it got merged to main. And now if we go back to source tree, we can see that main is now on the same path. It's actually not on the same path as this branch because there's a merge commit. But you can see that those two paths, they're really closely related, right? So this branch got merged into main. So the two parts, they got merged. So now they're the same. And now you continue on main. Okay, that was a very long excursion, but I don't know if this helps
That
you
app that
maybe
you're
a bit.
using, what is the name of it?
It's called source tree.
Source tree, is it like you should pay for it or is it?
No, I think it's free. It's made by Atlassian, the people behind Jira and Trello and stuff.
But if you create a new branch, this file, it will be still there or it will be disappeared.
Okay, so now you're asking me to create a new branch, right?
Yeah.
What should I call it?
JavaScript 4.
Okay, so now we're on a new branch and the file is still here, right? If we look at our history, now this branch got created on top of main, right? And the last commit in both of these branches is the merge commit. So when you create a pull request in GitHub, it's like a little technical detail and you merge it, GitHub will create a merge commit where it includes all the changes from your branch, like JavaScript 3 week 2, and it will all combine them in one commit and put them on the main branch. That makes sense. Okay, let's move on to the actual topic of today.
But if I have files that was merged before,
If you don't have files that were merged before, what do you mean?
I directly with UN.
Yeah, maybe you
it
need
was
more.
Yeah, it was pulled, merged, and I would check the main branch again, create a new one, and I still don't have my files. But if I change my branch to last homework, it will appear.
But are you sure they got merged already? Maybe the
Yeah,
pull
because
request
it
is
was
still open.
checked also for manually.
Okay,
You can check it.
yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I always merge it.
Okay,
It's on the GitHub one.
so let's have a look at that. Like, make sure to catch me later to figure this out. That's not normal, at least.
Free registration. Should we have a bit bucket account?
No, but they require you to create a free account on Atlassian, so you will have to give your email address and make sure to uncheck the check mark for newsletter so you don't get spammed. But they want you to create an account to download the software. It's stupid, I know.
Well, it's a skip button.
There's a skip button now?
Yeah.
Okay, try that. But yeah, I mean, you can also try one of the other Git clients. Like, I guess if you go to, there's actually a website on the Git website. There's a page where they list all the different Git clients, right?
It kind of is something very similar to.
Yeah. And there's also GitHub Desktop, which I think is a bit confusing because it simplifies a lot.
What about Git crack?
I haven't used it, but it looks good. It seems to be free also.
No, it's like only 7-day trial,
Ah, okay.
right? You use it. You're still using it.
Yeah, it's a pro trial, so you can use the basis version apparently without it. Well, anyways.
This is like the same thing that in German now in VS Code, but more upgraded and coding portion will go.
Yeah. So what is a good example of this? Like nowadays, these things don't exist anymore, but like it was very common in the beginning of like using computers that you would have a command line tool, right? Something that works on that what we now call the terminal. And then you would have a UI that works on top of that. And this is the same thing. So you have a user interface that works on top of the command line tool. So you can use both, whatever you feel more comfortable in. And sometimes I will use the command line, for example, for git push force. I always use the command line because there's no button in source tree to do that. But then if you want to see what's going on, you might open your client to have a look, right? So so I think it's really good to try out different modes of interacting with Git. Exactly, yeah. It helps you in your workflow. Cool.
Back to James.
Yes. Should I share this this page with you?
Yeah. We truly needed this, to be honest. Actually,
Which class are you again? Class 24. Okay, cool. All right. So And yeah, keep in mind that it's going to take a while for you to figure these things out. It's normal. Like you, in the beginning, you will struggle, but try to read and ask, and then you'll learn about how Git works, right? So today's topic is JSON and APIs. You know a JSON?
Oh, no, we were discussing on the name of it, how people pronounce it.
Okay, yeah. Okay, I would say JSON. That's very classic to say it like that. JS on. I love it. Yeah, so JSON is an exchange format. So it's like a way to format data when you send it back and forth. In this case, between the browser and the server. And there are a couple of rules. So you will have to use double quotes in JSON. You cannot have commas at the end. Like JSON is a bit strict in terms of how you format the data. Like it has to be a specific format. It supports some data types like string, number, object, array, boolean, null. And in JavaScript, we are very lucky because we already have utilities built in to parse JSON, like convert a JSON document into a JavaScript object, and to stringify into JSON. So from a JavaScript object or array, creating a JSON document, right?
Is it another programming language, or just like another theme of JavaScript? You can say?
It's a really good question. It looks like this. Maybe you've seen it before.
What like this?
This is what JSON looks
Yeah,
like.
right.
Yeah, it looks like HTML. Well,
So basically, JSON does what Prettier does. In Visual Studio.
what I
That is, look at the organization file.
can you repeat the question?
The last homework.
Yeah.
We work with this huge array of movies.
Yeah, it's a bit like that. So you can store an array of movies, for example, in a JSON file. You send it from an API to your browser. And that's because when you ask an API or a server, like, can you send me this information? It will not send you like plain JavaScript. It will send you some format. It can be HTML or it can be JSON in this case, right? And actually what I would want you to do is take some time on your own and then build groups again and look a bit into JSON, like what is it used for? Like, why do we need it? There's some resources here, some examples also. Have a look at them.
Right now,
Right now, let's take 10 minutes on your own and then 10 minutes in groups.
May I
Cool.
answer that question about the HTML?
Yeah, sure.
The thing was that, as was said that, we want that we can communicate like data that we have between two different processes, right? Like let's say you have an array with some values, and you want this to send this out to somebody else, and then they can, extract that data and they have it on their machine the same way that you had it in your machine. Now, if you had to do this yourself, how would you do it? Good question. Like, you could do it just, is that no, what it is?
it's like zip.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit,
Yeah.
I guess so. I guess so.
So it's not compressing.
Yeah.
Like when you download something.
It's a common format.
So you would have, my, you did you see or
None of them are working.
anything?
I don't know.
Oh, anyway, now, this is better. Okay. Okay, going orange then.
You can use
Orange is the new black. So you would have an array, right? And then you have, two values in it, let's say A and B, two strings.
So it will look like this on your machine, right? And you want to transfer it to somebody else and they can do something. I'm not sorry. And then you have A and you have B, right? And how would you do it in a way that you take this, you make some sort of TXT, let's say. And when I get it, I can take the TXT and get this back. I mean, one way you could do it is just you literally put this into your HTML, right? Or your TXT. Like that's it. Like that's what? 9 characters, boom. And then when I get it, what do? Good question. Do I like go by character? So, oh, this is a square bracket. So I have to, this is an array. So I create an array, you know? That's empty. And then I go again and I look like, oh, this is a a quotation. So it's going to be a string. So I'm going to make a string. Then I read until I get the other quotation and I get the A out and then push that in. And then oh, it's a comma, so I have to get a new value. It's just tedious, right? So what we want is that there is some way that we can transform this into some TXT that is going to be extracted in the other side. But we don't want to care about how to do it. Then you have standards how to do that. And you said it's like HTML. And to be honest, it is, because let's look at it this way. Like an HTML is nothing else but a JavaScript object, basically. You have the string, like when you have a tag, let's say you have a P tag, right? A paragraph. And then you write something in it, I don't know, hello. And that's inside of the body tag. What is basically like we had an object in JavaScript, let's say your page, which is an object or a dictionary, right? That has a thing called body. And the body is again a dictionary inside of it, in which you have a p tag, which value is hello. Does that make sense? So this is basically the same thing. And then if you were to just remove this, then you see that this thing expresses the same thing as this thing. And if you don't think of HTML as just a page, you can have any sort of value. Let's say that you have not have body, you have, I don't know, like person, or just let me call it, I don't know, Jim, and then you have him here just stop, and you have here name, let's say. Like these are not real tags, but I'm just saying these are keys. And then you can replace the same things here. So you have his name is Jim, and he has a name of hello, but of course should be Jim. And this is what you call XML.
Yeah. Have you ever heard of XML?
XML is basically just HTML, but you don't have predefined tags that you can use. You can use any tag, but the thing is, this is just a key, what you call, and whatever is between the opening key tag and the closing key tag is the value of the key. And the same thing applies here. So that's what you call XML, but you can see that it's quite hard to write because you have to take all these things and you have to delimit them. So instead you can do just this, and this is what JSON is.
JSON is the better version of XML.
Yeah,
basically.
exactly. Like over time, you just replaced it.
I'm sorry, a question.
Yeah.
Should we write it ourselves, or there is a way to turn it from what we have to that?
That's exactly. So when you have this, as I said, when you have this in JavaScript, like object, I don't know what object, but I don't know. I don't know, like friends, and you have only one friend, Jim, you kind of sad. Then this is an object of which, let's say, it's an array, right?
Yeah.
Of people. And there's Jim, whose name is not hello, but of course should be Jim, let's say. I mean, it's kind of a weird example, but anyway, this is what you have in JavaScript, right?
Yeah.
And what it's going to do is just you have some method, I think it's JSON stringify, right?
Yes, this is what I mentioned before. So you can take a structure in JavaScript that looks very, very similar to JSON already, right? You have an array of stuff and you can say JSON.stringify on this and then pass in this structure.
Yeah, if you call this thing, then you will get a string. I don't know, we just call it str is equal to this string, and it's going to turn this into the JSON, which is well, ignore this. The JSON is going to be here in this box. It's just going to be that you have friends. That's the name of the variable, right? And then the value is an array. And in there you have Jim. Of course, or even if it is like this, then it has to be an object. My bad.
So
Excuse me.
basically JSON is the HTML version of JavaScript that is flexible to share.
Yes.
It's called serialization. You take your object or any sort of object that you have in JavaScript and you can turn it into text. And that text is going to be guaranteed to get decoded. It's called deserialized. On the other side, it's going to do the same way on the other machine. And it's good to think of it that, sorry, I mean, this is something that I should do, but do excuse
That's
me.
fine.
If I can just take this out, then what you know is that, so it's, it says there, right, that if you have, those types, only those types. You have a string, it can be a string, any value, in JSON can be either a string, which is just some value between quotes. That's how it knows it's a string. That's why you have to use quotes. It could be a number, which is just 1 or like 2.3 and stuff like that, but without quotes. Crucially, without quotes. An array, right? An array is something that is just between two square brackets. It could be just an empty one. Otherwise, it's just some array, and we call this primitive types. You have to think about what that is. And also, of course, it could be a Boolean, which is some special strings, true or false. But again, crucially, without quotation marks, or it could be null. Right? So these are the primitive types. It's so called. And an array is just basically two brackets. It could be empty, or it could be an array in which there are primitives. These kind of things, but whatever combination, it could be a Boolean and a number and stuff like that. That's how you can think of it, and it could be any length. And an object is again shown with these braces. I think it's called brackets. I don't know. And then it's always going to be a string first, so something, and it has a value, any other value. So it could be an object, or an array, or a primitive. And what this shows us crucially is, and this is something that you guys really have to just understand about programming, is that in JavaScript you can take these components, an array or an object, and you can, whatever data you can imagine, you can create it with this. Because let's say that you have a database of people, or let's say a phone book. And the phone book will be, we have people, so we have multiple people. That means that at least we need an array, and then one person has a name and a phone has a name, a phone number, and let's say an age. I mean that if it has a name and an age, an age and a phone number, those are two different values, right? So it's an object, exactly. It's not the same type. So we're going to have the name here, which has a value of an object again, as you said, which has age, let's say, which is what type? A number. And then you have a phone number, which could be either a string, or if you want in Danish, in the terms, it could be, it's always like, it cannot really be a number, right? It could be that it's like 45 and then it starts with a 0, and then you cannot actually use it. So it's, let's say you have a string. There you go. And then using this logic, you always, if you think about it, any sort of data can be expressed with just this. So you can with the JSON, you can create any sort of data that you can imagine. That's what you want.
So as you said, Node.js is the better version than XML. XML is also a markup language.
Exactly.
But what means X?
It is extended. Yeah. HTML is hypertext markup language, XML is extended, so it can tolerate any sort of things. Like you can even have anything like, I don't know, my dog or something like that. And then we close it to the same thing. But whatever is in between here is the value of my dog, and then you can nest these things, and then you can have the same expressive power of JSON, and JSON is also markup language. But it's very easy to, as you can tell, it's very simple to read and see what the alignment is.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why JSON became so popular, because it's much more readable and much closer to how it looks in JavaScript. Right? You have a question?
Doesn't mean that if you do some file, you have to use policy.
No. Any sort of file, any sort of basically programming language, you can use JSON.
Yeah.
Like if you have a Python file or a C file, you can take your, if it's a compatible object, you can create an object out of it. But then you have more complications because you have to, I don't know, explain what type this object represents.
And you can even create JSON files on your own. And I think I'm going to change the exercise now so that you will actually try it out and create your own JSON file. And I think let's just take
Is it okay if we search a little bit about JSON so we
Sure.
can have a better understanding and then we can do the JSON?
absolutely, like combine both exercises maybe, but maybe we're not going to have time for the group thing. And also make sure to take a break if you want to. I think we're going to take like, let's say 25 minutes for this. So yeah.
Do excuse me for explaining what they.
No, it's totally fine. I mean, that's what you're here for. So perfect.
I mean, was it clear? So you understand what JavaScript is and what JSON is, what's different? JavaScript is a programming and JSON is just a way to express data that you are guaranteed to understand. Everybody will understand in the same way.
So you find the exercise on the Notion page here on the right hand side. It's the last link. And it says that imagine you're running a meal ordering website, orders come in from the web, and you need to store them in a JSON file. Create a JSON file with 2 orders that contain at least these things: order name, order ID, price, list of drinks, order extras. Think about what type the data should be saved as. This is basically what we just talked about. Like, think about how to convert these things, order name, list of drinks, into one of the available types: string, number, object, array, Boolean, null. Right? And then when you have your JSON, you can just create a text file. Try and paste it into this validator that that is the third link. And then you will see that if the JSON is valid, right? It will tell you if it's valid. So I've just pasted A and it says, okay, it's not valid JSON, right? So I hope that your JSON will be valid or you will be able to fix it.
Is it something like that we can just copy paste the JavaScript code and then rewrite it to JSON?
Almost, yeah, basically.
Yes.
Do we have something like that?
Yeah, I mean, this is what JSON parse does. Right? String files, excuse me. Yes.
So it's enough that you just write the JavaScript and then just JSON string file. Console log it. You console log what JSON string file is. And the word of advice, if you want to write JSON yourself without JavaScript, then if you can, I think VS Code is just right click, format documents, going to make it nice and aligned. That's really useful. Just right click and format document is always helps in that. If you want to change something, if you didn't already, we just want to change something. Let's say.
Okay, so
Get a typo. You don't want to write the whole JavaScript again. I'm going to go to JavaScript and change there and rerun the whole thing. It's going to be complex, but of course, in this example, you can do it in JavaScript. It's fine. And actually, it's better that you guys practice the JSON or string of thing.
yeah, actually, I think we're also getting to that when I have an example here, which you can also look at if you want to, and we'll go over that in a bit. But let's now take a bit for the exercise, a bit of time. Look into it, and if you want, take a short take a short break, like if you need to use the bathroom or drink anything, right? Cool.
One thing that you guys can do, and I think it's like quite cool, is that you guys create some object in JavaScript. You console log it, then you console log what JSON stringify does, and then you use JSON parse on what. So what you take what JSON stringify return, you JSON parse it, and then that's a completely unrelated variable, right? So she doesn't know anything about the other one, and then console log that result, and it should be the exact same thing, and you understand what actually goes on. So you just emulate what, like I simplify my data, send it over to the server, and it uses JSON parse, and it has the exact same view of it that I did. Does that make sense? I like not to use right. And let me see if red is any better. I think that orange is shit. So, oh, there you go. So red, so no, that variable A is you just create any sort of object or array or whatever you want. Right, then you create a let JSON string is equal to the JSON dot stringify of variable A. Well, first of all, here you should console log it. Excuse me.
It might be
And
more
then
visible, but it's also more audible.
yeah, and it just gave up. So then you there you go, and then you create a new variable that's completely unrelated to variable A, which is equal to JSON.parse. That thing.
Yeah, so if you want to go into more detail, like with this more advanced usage, you can look at this code pen that we're gonna look at after the exercise, and you can try out the thing, because I think this includes some of that.
Yeah.
So let's look at that after the exercise, right?
There you go. This should be readable, I think. Oh. A bit. I think this is confusing.
Magane? Ja tak, wybrać na noma bez uwagi awasynku. Ja do tego
That for B or what?
JSON.parse. It's parse. JSON.parse. This thing, the JSON string.
It's happening.
Oops. I think they use permanent markers over here.
Is it also?
I think so.
Or is it us?
No, it's not us. Was it us?
Long time ago.
Yeah.
Was sent to them.
Oh, this one.
Yeah,
Oops.
it's ours.
Body?
Oops.
Body had it?
Can this be used?
Yeah, we can. Yeah, I think so.
Otherwise,
Which one?
I feel like it doesn't matter, as long as it's alcohol. We can check maybe in the cabinets if they have like specific things, because I feel like I saw, like there's like whiteboard.
Those in the which ones?
Try to use
I mean, I found the permanent markers though. Doesn't mean you. Oh, here. Yeah, I think so. Yeah, it is.
Split, right?
Yeah,
Yeah, but don't use that,
I'll try this first, right?
yeah, but maybe just use the paper.
I already put it on, so. Mine as well. There you go.
Does it work?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. But maybe it will.
Well, so it's not gonna make it less efficient. I guess if it.
Do we write JSON and .js
Dot .json and .json.
or .json?
Yeah.
.json. Let's do it. .json. So, we'll write, no, not Oh, anyone? No, JSON.
I think we rewrote it. That's I think we wrote it so. Because with the permanent markers, I think we use some special means. But these two work, and these are whiteboard markers.
Yeah, we can now there's a homework that there's a really like that. But not today. Sort of extended We'll see how far.
Nothing changed, but only building a like work. I don't know. Seriously? The same way. Yeah. You did that was. Yeah, there you go. And this string, you can write the file, and the original file, it can be the exact same way. But you cannot say that it's a variable, right? I mean, that's just the representation of what everybody else can see. You want the what you understand the same postulate. Yeah. Okay. The question is how to put this into just one line. Then you just tell it to you. You can take that line and do something with it. And you would have this in your program, right? Yeah, exactly. This data. As you can tell, just one line of string, and still it took that, did some magic, and now that's it. You that one. So still the exactly. But that example, like to try for. I see. You did this. Okay. I'm just trying to figure out. 15 people could be a number as well, right? No, I'm finding here. But and then it did work. So this is the output, right? You read the JSON and this is memory, right? That's where it does it. So. Yeah, that's if I could. Yeah, sure. Oh, yeah. Yeah. You're running yourself. Yeah, I see that. And so you thought that So you have, what was it? Can you show that? Order later.
So this is the one was that.
So you have basically, we want to have proper orders, right?
Yeah, it's not honest. It's radio. And next
That's nice. But one thing is, wouldn't it make more sense to get the name, the order, what's the order, what's the side of the objects? If that order name is stated in file, then you wouldn't have that name, you know what I mean? Sometimes these errors can be misleading because, so you want that, when you order object, the name, ID, the price, this is drinks and extra. But right now, the name of the order is outside of the order. So try to find this file. Looks at it. It's a state, right? The state should be within the order ID, so you can know what order ID. If we have order ID one, which what was the name of that? Let's get this way. You want an array of orders, right? Let's say you have orders, what's an array of orders, just multiple objects of the same kind. Have something called orders, right? Multiple order to receive, and then it will be an array. I can put that. Here, you place one which by address that. Anyway, great. And here, you have, you know that you insert or you got orders, right? And you want to look over them. If you don't, if you have like this, you first don't know what the order name is, but can't enter the order. Yes, and the idea is that like care about that,
Let me show you something.
Okay, okay, goodbye. Everyone, I have a tip for you. So if you use hang on, if you use JSON stringify, you're probably using that, right? So pass in this as the like second and third parameter, null and then 2. So when you do that, you will get nicely formatted JSON instead of just a blob of string. Try that.
So. One thing, yeah, well, that's fine. It's good that you want to provide the JSON file yourself, but then you understand this. Thank you. once you have this, if you have two of them, they'll be the same format, right?
Yeah, because the source in the in JSON, not the rows.
Wait.
No, I don't worry.
Let's, I'm going to ignore that. Yeah, I'm going to, please.
Because rows are I found.
I'm going to call the police if I want.
I found this this problem.
Yeah.
Order.
Yeah.
And
Oh, I can.
Would you like some more time for exercise? More time?
Okay, so let's.
Yeah, it's fine.
Yeah.
In our way, we can with the Firefox.
Yeah, see, this here is redundant. This is the Firefox name is Firefox. Like, why would you have that like that? It doesn't make much sense. And also, in this way, you already know what browsers you can expect, right? Because there's only so many. You know, like if you get the browsers, you can see the Firefox, Chrome, Opera, Edge, Safari. So you know what you can what to look for. So we have. But the browser gives you what you expect. So you know what these keys are, right? But then also you have no idea what these orders.
Yeah, we should do this here. We can have our
Yeah, I see that what you mean. But you see the difference in the use case, like with the orders, you don't know what is going to be. Then you just look how an order is. And then you go over the orders. Like I think you can see how that's happened. So that's now just add a new order. Another one. Then just add a column here for this right? And then it's good to say that you copy it over, but still say basically anything else. That's all. Yeah, there you go. And then stage is for and order addition. Yeah, that's. So this is your JS3, right? Order. Fair enough. Yeah, fair enough. So this is a JSON string, right? Without the files that we did on the file.
Yeah.
Right? But you know, right now I'm going to hear about that. I'm going to figure out. Now, to create the string variable, just put the JSON as the yeah. Give you the single quotes, otherwise I'm going to the example JSON, whatever is there, just control A. The contents of the file. And so I won't be going there. And then the next thing that does it work?
Yeah, well, of course.
See, it's taking like this and the same as the corresponding code. So we put it in single.
How I did it, yeah.
Oh, yeah, the thing. So you can do that. You should go here. Yeah. Great. And now, what you do is, that's been valuable doing it for us. And then the brackets put JSON.
Then that.
And
Yeah. Right, and now console log it up. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, so
Now run this. It actually understood just the way that it meant it.
and the J.
Point is because now, let's say we have this record, right? And it looks like this. Now try to console log it and JSON by this thing. So string it by the parse variable. Could also run console log.
Yeah.
Now based on let's check it file. Round brackets. The actual job is that.
Yeah.
This is the zero, so comma, null and do it.
Yes.
I think it's null. And comma.
That's where
Now run this.
Yeah.
You can tell it's using the exact same JSON. What that means is that what you wrote here in the example JSON on the top of your head is the exact way JavaScript do it. That means that if you have this like the password in your machine, in your client machine, you put that into the JSON, you send it over to the server. It just scans for parts and we have the exact same variable that you have locally on this JavaScript machine.
Do you remember the question from the beginning where somebody asked, can I only use JavaScript to create space? And this is the point. So you could have a backend and some other program running, I don't know, Python or PHP, Java, whatever, and it can still create a JSON. But it couldn't create JavaScript because it doesn't know JavaScript. JSON is like a contract between different languages.
On YouTube about JSON language and
Okay, but which part do you understand trying to find the way it works or might be what you need it? It was a point to see that, you know, will
our JSON showing JavaScript
how you know they were variable in JavaScript together in JSON or just do it or nothing else. And I can sell to anybody on the planet this parse
If JSON only holds the data,
and again, yeah, otherwise how else you code it?
just the way how export your variable and
Exactly, a data format.
I think it will make more sense when we go to the second part of today's lesson. We talk about APIs.
Yeah.
And then you will need JSON. Because all the APIs talk JSON.
Right.
It's like the official language.
I just had experience with APIs that you know you have to create a Google Map in this homework.
Then you use it. The API are very interesting. You see why. Yeah, but that's just the beauty of it is that just because you obey some rules, like if you double quotes and colons and this character, why if you obey those rules, you can create a file that anybody on the world on any machine and any programming language would understand in the same way. And that's what it's you want to, like when you log on to Facebook, you're like, load my messages. your message will arrive in JSON, and your browser will, no matter where the JSON, where the data server is fine, will be able to decode your message and show it to you, no matter what the implementation was. That's what you need JSON.
Kind of translation for other languages.
Yeah. You can think of it as kind of like, yeah, like flipping kind of a thing, but then whether that's compressing it, just basically the what would be a good example. Like common language, yeah, that's a good thing. Yeah. If you have one common language like in English, if English was a language in a way that no matter who I said it to, they understand the same way that I said it. For human language doesn't make sense. So I can understand. Like, it's a middle of the point. But, you know, if you get some JSON, I think it's a big understand. Right? But you have to learn just some rules of JSON. For my own? No. We always feel it with the programming language, so that we have something and we just bring it.
Okay, I think we should look at some details. Like this isn't exactly the solution to your exercise, but it's something related to the exercise. Would you like to look at it? Maybe not. Are you still deep in programming your JSON?
We do the other questions or only question number 1?
You mean the astronauts?
Yeah.
No, that's actually for the second half. So we'll talk about that after lunch.
Lunch?
So there's still a lot. So yeah, I hope you won't be too tired after lunch to look at that, but we'll try. So if you want, we can take 5 minutes to go over some of the nitty-gritty of JSON and handling JSON. As you can see, I have this code pen that you can also open, where I created a variable called JSON. And does anyone know what this is? Like, why is this strange character here? A backtick, why is it here? Do you know? I couldn't I just do this? Like normal quotation marks?
Because you will not have conflict with the single quote and double.
Okay, I'll have a conflict, but then why don't I use just single quotes here?
You can't use,
But it's still not happy. But why?
Because inside is double. If you
That should be fine, right?
if you use inside the single quotes, you have something.
There's another, but this is not working. Like I've been using single quotes outside and double quotes inside, and still it's complaining. But why?
Because there's a balance inside.
And there's another reason, and that's because it has new lines, and you can't have new lines in a string. So because you can see, like this is line 2 and this is line 3. And so I made a line break, and you can't have a line break in a string. Like I would need to do this for the whole thing. Would need to move it all to one line. Does that make sense? Because your string cannot span over multiple lines. But JavaScript invented template literals for that. So you can use, hang on, you can use this backtick to enclose a string that spans over multiple lines. It's very useful. Okay. So that's the start. So I created a JSON structure, a JSON document, and I assigned it to this JSON variable. and you've all tried this, right? JSON parse. So that works perfectly fine. We're parsing the JSON and it's in this variable. You can see that. Let's see. Where's the console? Yeah, so this console is a bit confusing. Yeah, so it passed the JSON to a JavaScript object. And I mean, as you can see, you can even use emojis if you want to. The JSON is very flexible as long as you adhere to using strings, numbers, and so forth. You can't just, for example, you can't just say new date here, right? You can't just send a date in JSON. That's not possible. Okay, and then stringify, I already mentioned that you can use the these two parameters to make the JSON pretty. And the second one is actually just for your convenience for how many tabs or spaces it will use to indent. So you can use 2, you can use 4, you can use 16, whatever you feel like. Yeah, and remember in your JSON, you can't have any comments. You can only ever use double quotes. And something that you might be used to, you can't just put a comma here, right? That's not going to work. Like you can't have a comma at the end of your list. As you might usually do in JavaScript, maybe. It's something that some people do, but you can't do that in JSON. It will complain. Okay, so here I have an invalid JSON. Does anyone know what's invalid about that? Single quotes, yes. I'm just going to leave it like this for now, but there's also another thing that's wrong. These? Oh, they're fine. I mean, I'm using a different, like this is line 36. So yes, the comma. Okay, so let's try what happens when I say JSON parse and then on this invalid JSON. Okay, it just throws an error. It says unexpected character at line 2, column 19. So so you can see it doesn't actually run any further. Like the JavaScript just doesn't execute anything after this line because it just crashes, right? It just says, okay, I can't handle this invalid JSON. You have to do something before I can continue. So what we usually do is that we use try catch. Right, so you have a variable in that you define just being empty, maybe. So I just define let result, and that's basically the same as doing this, right? And then I wrap the JSON dot parse in the try catch, right? And because later I want to show this in the inner HTML of this field, I will also stringify it again, because why not? And as you can see, we also have this catch block here. So whenever an error happens within the try, it will not crash. You see there's no red error message here in the console, but it will just do whatever is in the catch block, right? And as you can see, we see this no good here because we've been assigning no good to the result, and then we've shown that on the page. It will just continue working just fine. There's no fatal error. So when I fix the JSON, it will then do whatever is in the try block, and it will not do what is in the catch block. Does that make sense? Yeah, so I fixed these two issues here that we had in this JSON.
Why did you
Because in JSON, you can only ever have double quotes. You cannot have single quotes in JSON. But this is, you might think, but why would I ever get like broken JSON, right? And you might be right. It's not that often that it happens, but sometimes maybe your connection drops out and you only get half of the JSON from the server, right? And then your JavaScript just crashes if you don't use try catch. So remember to use try catch when you're working with JSON. Yeah, and that's and that was the first part. Are we ready for lunch?
We are ready mentally, but not physically.
Okay. So
Stomach is demanding my brain to stop.
yeah.
about the back to
Yes. Yeah, so I don't understand. Can you please say it in JSON? Yeah, so actually now that we have the console open, you can see I think this could be interesting for the whole class. This is why I continue. Sorry. So now I change to single quotes, right? And it tells me that it cannot have unescaped line breaks. And what it means is this, right? I cannot have a new line. I can't have a line break. I can fix this by putting this all on one line. Right? But that's going to be very hard to read.
You know what, but Prettier did that for me.
Cool.
So I didn't need to. Didn't have that error.
Yeah. That's really good. So you see, when I'm done with this, now it's fine, right? But
Yeah,
now it's also unreadable.
Yeah,
So
but why are the people Prettier to do that? But not. I can just do it myself, but it would give me a line break. Or-
yeah, but you will have to use template literals to make it in multiple lines. It's just a rule in JavaScript that whenever you use single quotes or double quotes, you can only have one line within them. Like you cannot do this. It's just forbidden. Right? So that's why they invented template literals, so you can have multiple lines in a string. Makes sense? Okay, cool. Lunch is here. So let's go for the lunch.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thomas, you want to experiment with the pausing, the recording
I can.
for lunch?
Yeah.
I try to learn through reading as well.
Right,
Yeah, sure. My whole thing. I give you a sort of word. Yeah. Otherwise, the rest will create a new branch. Just command V.
Depending on your level, at least you can listen and then.
And then that makes it there all there, something with that, you can probably find most of the time. We found out this, and I was looking at like the whole beat. I was trying, yeah. Why I don't have any profiles in the data except all my repository doing this. Feel like education.
Well, you only need to call.
Yeah.
Okay, and it's like initial copy.
I'm doing how it moves, so.
It's like.
So for if you're doing it in VS Code, it's this
Using only everything is console.
console, and then how do I even open a console? I don't know how.
If you usually I have this button run in the right corner, but you don't have it. And it, yeah,
There we go. Then you use this, right? First, you will have to change to the right branch. So-
yeah, but I need to go to main first, yes.
No, well, yeah, I mean,
That's what I'm doing right now, my homework.
yeah,
I'm still doing it.
yes, so you go to main. Oh, yeah, this is what you do. Cool.
Nice. Because every time I need to go to GitHub and watch my code if I want to get something from old days.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense. And also if you commit, like on an old, like on an old version of the branch, then you might run into conflicts when you pull from GitHub later, or when you try to push. Because then they have diverged.
Yeah.
So always good to pull first.
It's for a few years ago when I had back the first. You're singing the song called Let's Keep It. This is the Danish parliament. I'm ready.
I think we're ready.
Let's go.
I restarted the recording.
Oh, yeah.
I did.
Jealous.
Are we missing people? Yeah, okay. We'll wait. We'll wait. We have more than 1 hour.
Give us a little.
Yeah.
Where?
I wonder if I could have another.
Yeah. I don't see mine. Oh.
It's all the current learning that we have.
Our British. Very famous old critical, so the closest thing after that is about that one British all the wins to Germany. Why slavery details. Trust me, like 2 days ago when I rated, I started with my English, so it was so real, I wasn't. Most of it, I had experience. College in Maine. I was in the end of my 14 years, so I think it was 2000. Beginning of 2000. Yeah, so we went on the phone with Brad, because like there in how many breakfast that we will go.
And where you child and they would check it out instead of age. I'm gonna, yeah, people are about 17 years old. And with baby face, you are working. Like in really high. Like my is only in. It doesn't spike it up. But it's not.
Are you ready to continue? There's some private teaching, right?
Okay, let's begin. The second part.
We're about to continue, sorry.
Yeah.
Oh, Git, okay, all right. We have used our Git budget today, so you will have to do this in your own time. Okay. So the second part of today is about APIs, and that's short for application programming interface. And last time when I prepared this this Notion page, came up with this, or rather I adapted this from Reddit, which is like, explain it like I'm 5. So it should be possible even for me to understand. And that's explaining APIs like I'm 5. So it says you have a friend who knows a lot about cars. You don't know how they know or where they get their info from, but you know if you ask them something like, what cars did Honda release in 2019? Or tell me the gas mileage on Ford Focus, that they will give you a good answer. They don't care what you do with that answer, as you can do with that information whatever you like. For example, you could write it on a whiteboard, or you could have it in your living room and periodically update the info by checking in with them.
Like chatbots.
It's a bit like a chatbot. A chatbot is also an API in a sense. It has more like a human
More so your weather app.
API.
They show you what the weather is going to be tomorrow. You have no idea what sensors they use, what information source they use, but you know that you're going to get just what you need. You know, all the information filtered down into 1 digit. How much will it be tomorrow?
Yeah.
Google is API as well.
Google has APIs.
For searching, yes.
You can, I mean, this is a metaphor, so it's not actually like your friend isn't actually an API, right? Guess you realize. I'm not an API. Yeah.
First explain.
I mean, this is sort of the main concept of APIs, that you have someone, usually it's a server or a service, and you ask them something and you get something back, right? This is how different programs,
Like JSON?
yes, like JSON. It's how different programs and applications interface with each other. That's why it's called application programming interface. And so interfacing means that they have a way of communicating with each other, and they can understand each other's input and output in a way.
A set of rules that you have to align with in order to for them to understand you.
Yeah,
Like, for instance, like if you want me to do something, you first have to say please, or something like that. Like a very simple example.
yeah. Yeah, so
That's the
imagine,
API. I will do whatever you want, but say please first.
yeah, so this could be a rule for your friend who knows about
Yes.
cars. Yeah,
A robot has to be programmed, so you don't give it a command, you have to, it tells you how you have to formulate that command.
so in this case, if we look at this metaphor, it's not really an API because an API needs to interface between two applications, two programs, right? And you're not a program, right? Your friend is not a program. So it's like, this is why this metaphor kind of fails. But imagine like two programs doing the same thing, right? The one program wants to know about the cars and the other program knows about the cars. And so somehow they need to exchange that information. Like a link, yeah. So what we usually use on the web is called a REST API. So that's one type of API and it uses JSON, as you already said. So it's basically like a contract that people agreed on. Whenever a web browser is talking to a service, they can use this REST API and the language that they will use is JSON, right? To exchange their data.
So API is not programming language.
No.
It uses JSON to define to share the information.
Yeah.
Yes, it's basically a formalism, like you have a formalism on how to write an email. Right? Should be a introduction, body and then inside it, right?
Okay.
And here is like the API is just an agreement of how you have to formulate the request.
So if I have understand it correctly, the language is JSON that would give you the information that you want.
Exactly.
But the API is the order of the information how you get it.
Basically.
Well, the API is
Like
the whole thing,
Yeah,
right?
so it's both agreements. Like if you give me a request that is formulated in this way and it's valid, then I will give you a response in this way. Like you know how you're going to get a response and you know what sort of request that he will get. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly.
And right now there are examples there, so I'm going to let you first talk about those.
Yeah, maybe we should look at some of the examples. So the cool thing about the REST APIs is that we can look at them in the browser. Like we can just open them as a link. Let's see, this is the Open Weather API, so I can't just directly use it. Maybe this one. So here we see the URL to one resource on the API. And I'm just going to copy it and open in a new tab. And you can see it actually gives me a response. So the browser is able to communicate with this API, with this other program.
The response for an API.
So this is the response the API gave me. And this is
what the API is.
And digital
It's these three steps. You input a URL,
Yeah.
something over there, nobody knows where it happens, and then you get this on your screen. That's what API is.
And what is that?
And it's a JSON.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's like a URL request and a JSON response. That's an API.
So this API has decided that the format, like people who designed this API have decided that the format of the response looks like this in JSON. So it has a success property, a deck ID, remaining property, and a shuffle property, and then they will have different values. And that's because this API is for shuffling cards, right? So it makes sense. We have the Open Weather API, but I think you have to sign up to use it, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so even though we're not signed up, when we don't have a user account on this API, because this API requires you to create a user account, it will still talk to us, right? And so I asked it, hey, can you give me the forecast by going to this UL? And then it said, no, I can't do that because you haven't provided a valid API key, right? So it doesn't give me the information that I want, but it gives me the error that happened. And then we have this GitHub page where we see a lot of public APIs. Like these are all APIs that you can publicly access. Like you don't have to sign any contract with someone and pay money or whatever. You can just use them, right?
Okay, and the way that we can use them is. For example,
Let me just finish going through the examples. We also have this API. So can you guess what it what it does? Probably not. Let's get another result.
9.8.
Oh, okay, fair enough. It's it generates random numbers by measuring quantum fluctuations of a vacuum. So yes, this number is truly random.
Wow.
235.
And then if you send another request, it will give you another number. Right? It's magic. And then we also have the yes, no, what the fuck API, which is quite interesting, I think. So it's also a randomizer. It can give you yes, can give you no, and sometimes it can give you what the fuck, but it doesn't do that right now.
You annoy it.
Yeah, exactly.
That also gives you.
Yeah, it also gives you a gift, but I think there's an exercise later where you implement that, maybe. I'm not sure. We'll see. Okay, so this is like all the sort of basics about APIs. Do you want to add anything to
Yes.
that? Okay.
To answer the question that a lot of you guys had is like, what's the point of JavaScript? I can give you a point right now.
The point of JSON or the point of JavaScript?
Both, actually. Both. Maybe there's easier to see. It's just that. Let's say that you want to create a tool that does the following, like you have a public Instagram profile, or do you even have to? Yeah, you have to have one. If it's a private, you can only see your public, the only stuff that you follow and is public, right? Okay, whatever. Let's say your profile is public. Just let's say that first. No, whichever way. Is that, Instagram, I checked, it doesn't have one, but I'm pretty sure Twitter has one. But let's say Instagram would have one, an API where you put on like Instagram, blah, 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 and then followers. This is the URL. Followers / your name. So your user handle, right? And what it would do is that this API would then send you in your JavaScript, if you fetch this, would give you a JSON array of all your followers. Like, I don't know, like an object where it's like the handle of theirs, whatever the handle is, how many people they follow, or how many people follow them, gives you a number, how many people they follow, this many, let's say, and is their profile private? Like that's a true or a false, right? That's a Boolean. And then you have as many of these as you have followers, right? The one that they can actually read. If you have a public profile, then they can read all of your followers, right? And what you could do with this is that then you would have a for loop. Let follower. Should I? No. Okay, I will use that. Just a second. So let's use const here. And the followers is the variable that you get by fetching, which is another const, right? So like fetch and whatever, right? You fetch this link with
We'll
your
get into that in the next.
yeah, with your actual user ID, your handle. And for all of your followers, it checks that if that follower is not private, so it checks that it's not a private account. Then what it does is that it again fetches their followers, or it fetches what they follow, and it matches up against yours. So what you have right now is an application that you input your handle, it goes through all your friends, and it shows what your followers' interest is next to yours. So it just shows you what common topics you would have with your followers, for instance.
The look
Like
the Instagram look
the algorithm, yeah. So that it just basically you could create right now an application, a public application that just input your Instagram handle, and it gives you what you follow and all the pages that you follow and how many of your followers follow that page. And then you would have like what common topics to talk about with your friends, for instance. That would be a useful application.
Is that legal?
It's of course it is. I mean, it's public information, right? But instead of you having to go on every single one of their pages and just scrolling and stalking them like you usually do, I don't have an Instagram account, as you can tell, because I have no idea how it works. Either way, but instead of you stalking yourself, you could let the Instagram public information API stalk for you.
Yeah, but you're right that sometimes companies like Instagram or even recently Twitter, they lock down on APIs because they don't want you to have that information.
Yeah.
Right? Because for them, there's money in the information. They want to rather like show you ads.
Yeah, exactly. So in an ideal scenario, I'm pretty sure that Instagram, which I checked, doesn't have one of these. Twitter used to have one of these, but I guess then they don't have it either. But what then people do is that they make a scraping API. What it does is just opens it has a bot. It's programmed that it clicks on the search bar on Instagram, searches your ID, clicks on your profile, clicks on your following, and checks and then scans all your followers and puts that into a database, and then it just gives you the data that Instagram would give you, but instead what it does is just it lets a robot read what it sees on the screen. There's also, that's also kind of hard these days because websites have these social medias have some filter to prevent robots from reading this, but it still works. And then you could create an API that does this, like so it stalks for you. For instance, don't do this. I'm not saying. I mean, you could. I don't think it's like illegal. It's public information.
Write an API.
There you go. But yeah, see, now then the last thing that we would have is just to understand how to write a server. You will not learn that after databases. I'm pretty sure, right? I think so. Yes.
Is it like an API if we, I don't know, search for some items and then Facebook suggests ads based on what you searched or what you was interested in, you liked, so API looks for it and then gives me relevant ads.
Well, basically, I mean, they don't really have to use it. I mean, they use an API, but it's not a public one, right? Because Facebook already has the data that it should filter. But it could be that they have a server that is that is responsible for creating the ads, and then you just read what ads I should present. Then I ask for those ads from a different server, and I just present it to you at the end.
Can API read JS codes?
Your JS code.
Because you know what, we did study something like that in JS. For example, we wrote codes that, for example, in a bunch of numbers, give us the odd numbers and stuff like that. I think it's really similar to what you're describing about an API.
And I can give you first of all, what I wanted to say, but this is that right now, you guys, let's say you don't use you don't create an API, you just create a website where you just input your Instagram handle and it just does this and just displays it. So you just take the body, inner HTML, and you just create a list of all the topics that you share with this person, like your common interests. Let's say you can right now, all of you, if you understand this the concepts, you can do it right now. And good luck doing that with HTML. Like you guys wouldn't be able to. That's why we learned JavaScript. So once I had that motivation out of the way, another example that we give you is that let's say I'm creating an app where I want to have a screen, a map where I show where every single one of the buses right now in Aarhus are, which would be helpful because I hate delays, and it just shows you where they are, right? But I mean, how would I do that? I would need to have the data, and then I would have to, like, I don't know, look at different websites where I could get this data from, and I just create, you know, a uniform way to do that. Is there an app for that?
Yeah.
But does that show you live where they are?
Yeah, it does actually.
Then never mind. Probably they have.
I signed up for the
believe
API. That's why I'm going to the website.
You sign up for the API.
Yeah, you can sign up for the API and you can develop applications using.
There you go. And then you could create an application where it shows you, like, on your phone, like, you are, like, this bus is this many minutes away from you. This website doesn't do that for you, but you could do that instead. But to access the information, they can charge you money for it. Basically, so if you were to create this, I don't know, Stalker API, you could charge money for it. You say that, you know, if you want to use my API, you would have to have a token, a password, let's say. And then I can just measure how many times this token requested the data from me, and I could charge you money for that. And there are a lot of people who earn money by designing useful APIs. Like, quite a bit of money.
Yeah, like for example, this random number.
Like the random number generator is also.
I mean, you could see I could only do so and so many requests because then it would tell me, hey, you can't do that many requests.
Yeah.
You're maybe doing something shady here. And so if I wanted to make like a lot of requests, I could pay them and tell them, okay, I want to use your service, your API, and I want to pay for your like server costs and whatever.
Yeah.
Quantum thing you need.
Exactly. Yeah.
So
How much would they usually charge for something like that?
We can check if you want. I mean, I don't know. But of course, you could do either a request-based charge or I don't know, a time-based. Like for 1 month, it's cost this much. I don't know. But I just wanted to tell you what the link between JSON API and the reason you guys are here is, I guess, it makes more sense. You know? So if you guys have a good idea for an API, soon you will be able to implement it and you can make money out of that.
This one is actually free, and it's basically donation driven. So they simply don't allow you to request that many numbers at the same time, like, right? Like you can only get a reasonable amount of random numbers. So even if you pay, you would not be able to get more numbers.
A lot of times, I mean, in any case, like information is private, but if you pay, they will publish it for you. For instance, like in my company, we need data on, I don't know, like energy creation, like how much is your power plant generating energy right now. Like I have no idea to know that, like I don't have a sensor there, but they will share it with me if I pay enough money. That's one way, or it's just something that is convenient. Like, as I said, discrete APIs, like, otherwise I would have to go on every Instagram account and look at every single one of the followers and then write it down into a text file. That's just way too much stuff to do. But instead you can do this with a robot, right? It just opens a browser, inputs your name, your followers, and it scans it, which is something that any robot can do right now. But for you to go that will take you time. I don't take you like a month. I say 2 weeks to go that, but instead you just pay someone who already did this and did it well.
API business, it's well, it's maybe a bit more difficult than.
1,000 API calls per day for free, and then after that, you
Yeah.
have to pay that much per API call. That means that
It's not a lot.
that means that if you have 1,000 calls, then that's 12 pounds.
Huh?
But what is this?
Oh, it's 1.2.
Just weather forecast, but you can
Yes.
just Google it, right? Without-
But you can Google it, but then how do you put that information that's on your screen into your application?
Let's say I was, have you ever seen these screens here around the city? There's some of these screens and they show weather information, like they show some information by the commune and then some
Yeah.
weather information. So I guess if you're a commune and you want to put up a screen like this, you will have to pay someone to give you the weather information. because you can't just have someone Google the weather and then put it into the database. I mean, you could, but it would be more expensive.
Use some labor, like labor.
There and make JavaScript to update every second.
Probably you could, but also Google has some measures in place so that you can't like sort of automate these things, because they don't want you to use their service as an API. They want you to use the service as a human so they can show you ads,
Yeah.
right? Because you don't pay for it.
Great question, because that is why some websites have the captcha. With like, click all the buttons where it has a bus, it has, I don't know, traffic light. They do this because if you have a bot that just basically opens your phone, right, or it opens a website and tries to read every single digit of what the weather is, because that's the alternative, right? Like either you pay them or you just use their website, right, or you can just Google the weather, right? But to get that into your actual application, you would have to scan the actual digits and turn that into your put that into your actual application. That's kind of tough on its own anyway, and it's a kind of waste of time if you just pay. But also, like they will realize, like, hey, this person is just at every single minute on the exact same time, just opening my website, just quickly scanning and then closing it. Like that's not really human, is it? And then it just shows you like fill in this capture, and now you have to make your robot fill in capture.
But when it's actually just the screen, it is the case from the menu, what you just say that the screen is like connected and it's our monitor, so it just shows the actual website, Google weather.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Like,
of course you could do that.
Oh, you mean like just embed the Google weather into our application?
Yeah.
or embed, yeah.
But by embedding, you're not gaining anything, just, you're promoting Google. They're okay with that. You can do that for free. Feel free to, put, I don't know, Facebook into your website. That's very nice.
This task, we were supposed to go to Google Maps.
Exactly.
Website just by using the link.
Exactly. But that's useful for them, because once they actually click on it to actually get directions for your, the place that you are presenting, now you're using Google, and now they can save your data and sell it shady ways. That's the whole story. But of course, they let you do that for free because that's good for them. It's when you want to still, like, I don't know, you want to get, Google to calculate for you the distance between two different points. You can do that if you wanted to. If you want to actually implement an algorithm that like calculates the roads and how and the traffic lights and everything, you can do that. Feel free. Or you can just pay us 0.012 pounds per request, and we will do it instead of you, and that's convenient. That's the reason why you guys do it. But I like your mindset of trying to save as much money as possible, I can do it myself.
Yeah, so there are always multiple ways to get to information, and one good way is to use public APIs, right? So these APIs, they are free and public. I guess
Limits, of course.
to a certain degree, right? All right. So now this brings us to the last part of today's input, basically, and then you can go on with some exercises. How do you how do you communicate to an API in the browser? Well, you use JavaScript, and JavaScript has a library or a function built in that's called fetch. It's a utility that you can use to talk to APIs from the browser, from JavaScript, even from Node.js, right? And the way it works is that you tell it to send requests back and forth between the REST API and your program, and then you get the data that the REST API provides you. It's asynchronous, so it's returning a promise, but don't be scared of it. I think you will figure it out. And then if you're wondering like what options you have when you use fetch to communicate with an API, I've listed 3 options here. So first of all, you can specify a type. So a request to an API can have a specific type. Let's say it can have get, it can have post, delete. There's some more. You can look them up. It's basically a convention or contract that people have come up with how to talk to a REST API. Right? If you use get, you signal to the API, I want to get something. If you call delete, you signal to the API, I want to delete something. And then you can also send headers. They're not that interesting right now. And you can also send cookies. So this is what ad networks actually do, yes. So whenever they show you an ad, they will also, the browser will also send their cookie that they might have set on another page so that they know, oh, you've visited this page before, and now you visited that page, right? This is how they use cookies to track you.
Against privacy? I mean, that's why you have
Yes.
an option to go down with it. So you have an option usually.
Yeah. But this is, I mean, this is,
Yeah,
That also is clicked on accept all cookies, like I.
well, there you go. But no, it's not, that's how you're doing to, and then they usually find some loophole anyway to
Yeah.
I
do what they
can,
want.
I
What
can,
about if you use some kind of VPN?
I can recommend you to use,
Sure, but then you still, as long as you're using VPN on
Yeah.
the same endpoint, and you still accept cookies, that endpoint is still going to get targeted ads.
yeah, so VPN doesn't protect you from ads or anything.
And as long as you are logged in, the cookies are not tied to where you are browsing from, but your actual account.
If you want to like sort of get rid of tracking scripts, I use an extension called Privacy Badger, which is made by the by a public foundation. I forgot its name. It's free and it's open source, but you can also use an ad blocker if you want to. Like maybe you heard about this. Yeah. Anyways, that was sort of an explanation. Yes.
Do you have a setting website that will run off JavaScript? What is that related to? For example, I want to read an article and there is payment. And then I turn off the JavaScript and then I appreciate it doesn't appear and I can read the full article. So does it relate to the
It's not really related to this. I guess it's just a matter of how this newspaper or whatever media has implemented their paywall. Like if they implemented their paywall in JavaScript, then if you disable JavaScript, it won't work.
But that's a good tip.
Well, I mean, this is a whole other discussion, like how you're gonna pay media, like, right? Without seeing ads and stuff like that.
If I may just say one more thing.
Yeah, sure.
The example that you gave, like you just embed the Google's weather API, like Google's weather page into your page, right? Why they allow that for free is because then maybe they say on the bottom, check out tomorrow's forecast here, and if they click that, then they immediately get thrown into their website, right? And what they do now is that they ask you, do you accept all cookies? And you're like, yes, sure, just leave me alone. What they will do then is that they can
They live on your page where.
they can tell Facebook or Booking or someone else, like, hey, this person on this IP address look for the weather in Tenerife. So they probably want to travel to Tenerife. So they're going to recommend you, places to be at Tenerife. That's why they make money from selling your data. So that's why they allow you to do that.
Yes, and just to be clear about this, cookies hadn't been designed enough. Like,
Yeah.
it's just Google found out how they could do that, and other ad networks, so they do it, right? But usually, typically, in your application, you would use cookies to authenticate your users, right? So let's say you have a public website and you have a member login, like where you can do some management of your site, or you can have a community to like, you have to be logged in. I know that's very old concepts. You might not remember this. Nowadays, you have a Facebook group or something like that. But if you have these type of things where you log in, you can use cookies, and they're very, they work really well. Like they've been built into browsers, and they can authenticate your users also to an API. So you can make your API, let's say, restricted. So your API won't tell anyone any information that is not public. But then if the person is logged in and has the cookie, then the API will respond with that private information.
So cookie is like basically the like user's history or.
No, it can store some information, and it can store, for example, an authentication key, like a passport.
Like for each user, right? So.
Yeah.
Imagine it's like SPR number. So
Yeah.
like the Danish government knows that you are really you, and there is some kind of storages when they understand, okay, CPR this, and here's the history of this person, like transaction and action, activity, other things.
But can it actually, it's not like this thing, so like if I am creating a website, I can do my cookies
Yes.
to read anything I want because.
Everything that you want.
You can only read whatever you stored in the cookie. Like your website can store some information in the cookie and they can read it again. But another website can't read this. Yeah, exactly.
But like, for example, I don't know, for example, I enter some random website and the cookies on Google, that website, like the thing that it's reading might be different. For example, Google just reads if I click on search, but on my website, I can do, for example, we had this task where like the user clicks button and we can see then in the console which button is clicked. But if I connect, for example, this not to the search button, for example, a user doesn't know, like I have a text, for example, and I specify to connect reader to each word, and then I see that user clicked on some words like love or I don't know, hate or refrigerator, and then I can read, but user doesn't know. He just clicked not on purpose. For example, he was excited and clicked exactly on this word, and I can read all this information, right?
Yeah, you can.
Without user knowing that.
Yeah.
I know that he clicked on this specific word, right?
That's what companies do actually, for example, companies like Facebook or Instagram, they are
Yeah.
tracking everything you do, which picture you're clicking, which button you're clicking, what kind of content you're following. They get more information, they have this.
How long are you looking at an ad? Look at an ad for more than visiting what you're actually interested in. They know, okay, this worked. You actually got there.
The same method in TikTok is really wild, actually.
Right, of course. You can see it happen.
Yeah, but it's like, you know that you clicked, for example, on Facebook, but you can make it for user usable, that user even doesn't suggest in his mind that someone.
But this is what we were talking about in events, right? So when you listen to events in the browser, you can listen to a whole bunch of events, and the user doesn't know which events you subscribe to, right?
So basically they can access our history, but the question is, if we delete our history, can they still access it?
I mean,
Delete your history.
You know what I mean?
no, I mean,
Say on your browser or what?
Yeah.
Your browser says which sites visited on this browser.
you can delete your local history in your browser, but it doesn't affect which information Facebook or Google or whatever company is tracking you has collected on you. Like they might not know that it's you, like your name, but they know like it's somewhat related to this Facebook profile or somewhat related to this Google account, right? So so this is how this works. Like they can track you over different pages wherever their services are used. But that's a whole different topic.
Branch, but on the other branch, you think that you deleted, but they.
I can hear experience in her work about the GitHub.
But if you delete, to be honest, if you delete a branch on GitHub, it's gone. You can't recover it.
But it was merged into something else that the history is there.
Oh yeah, that's true. Yes.
Yeah, how can we
Yeah.
get rid of?
And the problem is that if once you accidentally left your password or something up on GitHub and it was in one of the commits, you merged it into main and you know and then you forgot about it and like 2 months later, oh shit, it's there.
There's nothing that you can do, it's there, and it's there, so someone can look at it. You want to take, you should make the repo private, and then recreate the repo, but.
You will change the password. I mean, that's the easiest way
Yeah.
to do it. Right?
But in those 2 months, everyone could
Yeah.
be you.
Yeah, that's true.
But if you're using your browser in
So
the
they could be
incognito mode, so
me.
it helps.
Sending codes on my.
Yeah, it helps
desktop
a little
doing
bit.
my Stuff.
Or using an API in your name.
There's still methods to
And
fingerprint.
You will pay for 10,000
You,
requests,
but-
and then you will only send 10.
This is not really content of the lesson.
Now we're getting into the ethics of that.
Yeah. I would really like to give a masterclass on this. That's so fun. We should do it together. Anyways, so you can not only use cookies, but what many people use is API tokens that they will just send along with the request. So they don't use a cookie to authenticate you, but they use a token. So in this case, for example, if you want to use the Open Weather API, you need to ask them to give you a key. And then when you get this key, it's unique for you. And then you will add it to every request that you send to the API so that they know it's you who's using it and you're not sending a gazillion requests a minute. So the servers start to burn. And if you start to do that, then they will just block your key, right? So this is basically a way how you authenticate against this API, and they know that you're a legitimate user. Yeah, so this is basically all you need to know about Fetch for
Is
now.
that the same way that they control for example, some website, they have 7-day free trial,
Mhm.
Yeah.
and then after that, it just stops. They don't give you the features, and is that the same rule?
They will probably have, like, you need to create a user account, right?
Yeah.
So this user account is associated a token that they then use to communicate with their backend API, whatever. And then they will like, when you with your token, you request the service and they discover you've been using it for more than 7 days, they will tell you, hey, the trial is over, right? But this is how they determine how long you've been using it, by your user account in the background. So the token or the key is just sort of your identification. It's not really storing any information about you. They will have to look in their files. Oh, this key, we gave it out for this user. And so that they can match them. Make sense? Okay.
Is there a way to steal it?
To steal keys? Yes, absolutely. I mean, this is something that we always have to protect against, that people don't steal credentials, right? Same way with cookies, like you will have to, but the browser is really good at that. Like they're sort of protecting these things the best they could, right? So if, let's say I build a website that uses a cookie to sign you in, and it's hosted on, like, I don't know, example.org. And then you build a website hosted on another domain, you cannot access my cookies. Like you cannot know about my users. So the browser will separate that. They will never let you access the other site's data, right? Okay, so some of you have already looked at these exercises here, and those are sort of to get started on using APIs with Fetch. And we also have a code pen here. Maybe we should go through it. So yeah, this is the yes, no, what the fuck API. So this is going a bit into async await, but I'm not sure if I should mention this today because we've already been through a lot. So so maybe you should try and do it in the most simple way. So if we go to the Fetch documentation, let's see how they do it. There might be some examples somewhere, maybe.
Fetch interfaces.
the right.
No, I thought there was an example here.
Maybe Java
Guys, there you
uses
go,
it.
there, using the fetch API.
Guides.
Yeah, here it should be, if you scroll down on this page, using the fetch API.
Yeah, there we go. So what they do is they will use this then and then a callback. And then within the callback, you get the response, and then you can do stuff with the response, right? So you call the fetch method. You provide the URL of your API that you want to fetch. And then you say dot then. Provide a callback. And in that callback, you will get the response. Do you remember when we talked about callbacks, right? This is why it gets important now. So this is how you do a basic fetch. And then you can do whatever you want to the data. So so these exercises are about astronauts. So you're supposed to use this API to fetch some astronauts. And then you're supposed to show some text in the DOM. So show some page on your website. And then there's also a dog fan website where you're using a dog API. And there are some tasks here as well. So feel free to get started on this and ask any questions along the way.
Would you please explain the astronaut, please one more time? I didn't
Yeah.
understand it, especially the second part. There are numbers of astronauts.
This one.
Yeah, using the DOM, DOM.
Add the following text to the DOM using the data about astronauts. There are a number of astronauts in space. They are astronaut name 1, name 2, and name 3. So basically, you're supposed to write this text on a website and then replace these capitalized names with the actual data from the API. And if you look at the API, it gives you all the data you need, right? You can count how many there are and you can print their names, right?
How many there are and their names.
Yeah. And you
Only
remember,
5 of them because there were 10 astronauts.
I guess this is not accurate to to the data. So this is part of figuring out what to do, right? Makes
Okay,
sense?
so we need to write a code using that API that would show us how many astronauts do we have, what are their names.
Yeah, and when it says add the following text to the DOM, do you understand what that means?
Yes.
No.
Yeah.
Sorry?
No.
In a text?
Yeah.
Yes,
Put
exactly.
in our HTML, add a new paragraph or something like that.
Yes, so you'll make some HTML and then you replace the content that's in that HTML with JavaScript, like we've done many times before, right? It's just a different way of saying it. Good luck.
Remember the next function, let proper given array. Go with useful. Not the count stuff.
And we can look at this example later, or you can look at it on your own if you want to. It's just one way of implementing the yes, no, what the fuck API. I'll just leave this up for fun.
We are recording as always.
Yeah, I think we are recording. Stop recording. It's the only option I have. I had to change the Wi-Fi. They were blocking some. I couldn't talk to bot 22 on the back. So the proposal is Wi-Fi to the restrictions.
Do you think it's better that we make a list and that HTML document about it? Who has an idea?
Or what?
For the astronauts. What do you want to do with them? Do we put them in a list and it's HTML or JavaScript?
Oh, yeah, okay, it's efficient. Yeah, you want them turn it into this. Like you get a UL and then you get an LI for each of them and then you append it like a bench child. You can do that.
It's so the result should be HTML, like that's why you added to the DOM. In the end.
Okay, so we're gonna use the API, create the HTML list with all the information that we get from that API.
Yeah, that's why you learn JavaScript. So that's the link between these two things.
So you do it. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So
So
you
the
create
JavaScript that you link into the HTML and the JavaScript manipulates the HTML, puts it in there.
Yeah. This doesn't even make sense. And also, more outline. Define him up. It's pretty good.
Thank
We use it sometimes. If the bug is not coming, I'm all going on, and then it's a neat see where.
Yeah, thanks a lot.
We build Green so that it's a big mountain.
I have actually thought about this many times to build like a small dashboard at my home.
Is
It just says like next bus, next tram.
Yeah,
It's
it's
so
so
cool.
cool. You buy in whatever Eddie.
Yeah, like e-ink, it's really cool. E-ink. Oh. Nuts. But it's, yeah. But yeah, it's not really. What do you think?
Yeah.
You could also make one for, where the nearest,
Yeah, it was really real.
you think you use for the car?
Yeah,
The green,
green with the.
I know. They're very close. No?
Also.
I think it also can only has a big guy because it's a mix of big and all the public, so they sort of have to. I don't know, but I guess it's owned as a. Because they don't make any money from anything. They get paid by.
Yeah, and then to show, no? For the beauty, it's something. I don't want to put something in the day. Yeah, how big of it, how big of it? But how big of it is it? I'm having more than thing. Or if it's no, yeah, a little bit for you. The majority? Very scared 5%. Yeah, why? Compared with what we do. Because they sold most of the office. Oh, yeah, that's been owned by all the. There's really no problem. No, yeah, that's the bad. If somebody, because it's like, this is the app. And nobody uses anything else other than the Google Maps, right?
It's really bad.
Yeah.
It's cool. I haven't gotten that's so cool. And really, for me, if I can walk for minutes to the end, there was sometimes I mean, so then, especially in the winter, they could like standing in the cold, you could have stayed home. You could have 5 minutes of one. Yeah. So Very nice to display in my doors. This needs to go now. Sure. Lip bend is also. Lip bend is in so much and ladies and this. I mean, it's what I got into this lip band depression in December. They had this thing and yeah, that's right. It's even possible. Now in November, all the things are back and the background is also, where is the lip and stuff near to you? Oh, okay. Used to be. How far the walk is that from your place?
Because on the right.
Yeah, that's the same for
No, where's the? Yeah, and where it is and the base is. There is the space and the or then. Because one is literally also. Yeah, it's there's two types of money. Yeah. They would love that both goes to the. Yeah, the one goes to buy. Yeah. But it's so, I mean, you only notice when it's on, that thing is such a good service actually.
Those objects.
It's like 8 minutes. I cannot go that fast trying to fight. Buses double.
Give you
I didn't think of now. This has yoga on those days, and so yeah, okay, that's also the other thing. But again, what's not for another one. Oh, one leg, when it turns, it's a bit closer. I leave the house, it's like, we have that one, and then keep but then you also, you will be there, like, 7:45 something like that. Oh, yeah. Yeah. That takes a long time. That takes like 15 minutes to. But because it's in the evening, it's once an hour, so you can raise. That's my only. Trying to figure rush hour. Yeah. It's like, water freezes. Then there was. Oh, different kind of. Yeah. There was a huge competition at the beginning. Down to €5. This is to get but there have been several. Yeah. All of them. But also recently, and also they changed the live app, but they will have to redesign this whole. For me, it's like every morning I feel like a criminal. Because when I come from the gym, there's like I have to cross the street where it's really if I would go like a proper road, like over the tracks, then with the red light, you can light the race light, the race light, and then I would really achieve I was thinking that I and like yeah, so there's something right in that you can turn off the road, pass that one, and then you get there's two there's a little pin the actual right next to finally the whole sounds good from the and I was like, yes, I hope it's outside of Russia hour schedule so that like it when they were all scared of the car. It doesn't fun with the band that had it, and then it was gone, and I was going back to it. Old technology, yeah. Also, I feel like it's Oh, yeah, yeah, sometimes, yes. And so what they did is they, it's not easy because in the they can only use the one side of like that. It's part for like when it's still if you have a choice, it's okay. That's like because you can't explain from like you can be the way you see change the crossings. The crossings like then you have crossings is going on. Like, but with the reason you have like the things and the bridge and whatever you want to do. It's really right. You read this guy. Yeah, I think the least also by or the gospel guy or whatever they should we talked about yeah, they use this specific one. Yeah, but why didn't you begin to this before you build the whole? Yeah, we hear about this. In the same time. About the Japanese the absence of you go and you have on, you ask where you going. Organize chaos. No, the scene, but we could just go to the front door and immediately out the station. The money was. Sorry. It's good, but yeah, whatever
Sorry. Correct. And we get this. Is that what you think about? That's correct. That's correct.
Yeah, didn't I help? You did help, but I didn't. Yeah. Yeah. I did. I did. I'm not sure. I did the coding and I did the. How do you say? I'm not sure. Good. Okay.
Oh, they do the sample. The rest is not.
Hope you know what this. Let's make the next one.
Can you say like we're fetching APIs for the thing?
No.
It was like describing something like.
You're using fetch.
Like for what, one sentence is about like, for Instagram, whatever, we're doing something like for fun.
We're using fetch to talk to APIs. It's a bit technical, right?
No, there's no.
We're fetching from APIs.
Fetching from.
Yes.
No, that's not fine.
Okay, here's an info for everyone. If you're trying to use the Astro API in the browser, it doesn't work because it doesn't support HTTPS. Try using a different API if you're working in the browser. Maybe some of you made it work? No? On the local host? No? No, so if you're struggling with the Astronauts API, use a different API. You can see it doesn't support HTTPS, it only supports HTTP. So it doesn't work with some modern restrictions on browsers. Make sense?
Oh, it doesn't matter. It's wrong. Because I'm changing the whole thing. Yeah, yeah, I mean, I feel, yeah. And that's not either. That's no power. Not just. That was exactly the state, meaning that. This is response. Okay. It's going to take the cookie to account, so let's see. Yeah, but training this. Look what we're doing. We're trying to access a name on the. Yeah, I mean, that's good. We can also have objects. Yes. Yes. The API is basically on the server now. Actually, all the existing bits is the base. Guess the database did it. Transform it into base one. Yes, you can something there is something there. It's not sure, but it is one back. Before a function on a different machine. And then but this is the first. No, I just got we also there then first. Yes. There was what names, age, medical status. I don't know. They still know how they do so they will look for just the way that maybe I probably want to do Let's see how state transfer you is on. Then they never give up the city. So now we have grain. They struggle to sink the river and finding out. Okay. Well, no, you should provision. You can make it small move or you can make for people. Yeah.
this astronauts, it does only works on your, I think your server on local host.
Now we are able to. And here, the console how to do
Yeah. But who is selected as a Yes, so it's just use station. Yes.
Thank you. Good straight line. I'm trying to do this.
Now it's people that fix your adoption for the yes, the font very selective.